A ball of fire, heavy black smoke, 34 firefighting crews working to stop it from spreading. And a warning to residents: stay indoors, close your windows, hazardous materials are present. That is what Sunday morning looked like in southern Israel after an Iranian missile, or debris from an intercepted missile, struck the ADAMA Makhteshim plant in the Ne'ot Hovav industrial zone south of Beer Sheva. ADAMA, part of the Chinese-owned Syngenta Group, confirmed its plant had been hit but said no injuries were reported and the extent of damage was not immediately known. Israel's Fire and Rescue Service said the blaze broke out in an area that houses several chemical manufacturing and industrial plants. It set an 800-meter exclusion zone and told the public to stay away due to the presence of hazardous materials. Ne'ot Hovav sits about 13 kilometers from Beer Sheva, the largest city in southern Israel. The area is surrounded by Israeli military bases. The missile that caused the fire arrived as part of multiple waves fired at Israel on Sunday. Until the Ne'ot Hovav fire, there had been no immediate reports of damage or injuries from the day's attacks. The target matters as much as the fire. ADAMA manufactures active ingredients and crop protection materials. The Ne'ot Hovav industrial zone is Israel's primary site for chemical manufacturing and hazardous waste processing. A missile strike on a facility that handles toxic chemicals is not the same as a missile strike on an empty field. Even without casualties, the fire itself produces a secondary hazard: airborne chemical contamination that can spread with the wind. The fire service warned residents within 800 meters, but chemical plumes do not respect perimeters. The decision to classify the fire as a hazardous materials incident tells you what the responders found when they arrived. And the 34 crews deployed to contain it tell you the scale was not minor. Whether Iran targeted the chemical zone deliberately or whether the debris fell there after interception is the question Reuters left open. The Fire and Rescue Service said the strike was likely debris from an intercepted missile. ADAMA said it was hit either by a missile or debris. The distinction matters for targeting analysis. It does not matter for the people told to seal their windows. The Southern Front is becoming the most dangerous theater for Israeli civilians. Last weekend, Iranian missiles struck Arad and Dimona, injuring dozens in what Reuters described as one of the worst attacks of the US-Israeli war on Iran so far on Israeli soil. This weekend, a chemical plant is burning near Beer Sheva. The geography is consistent. The Negev Desert, the area around Dimona, the corridor between Beer Sheva and the Dead Sea. Iran is concentrating fire on the south, the region that hosts Israel's nuclear research center, its largest desert city, and now its primary chemical manufacturing complex. Each strike in this corridor forces Israel to defend more ground with the same air defense batteries while absorbing the political cost of civilians in shelters and industrial fires that produce hazardous plumes. Israel is hitting back. Israel says its strikes have hit sites tied to Iran's nuclear program and delayed parts of it, but there is no independent confirmation that the full production chain has been neutralized. An Israeli military spokesman referenced what he called Operation Rising Lion and acknowledged that Iran's nuclear capability was affected and delayed, but not completely destroyed. That admission frames the next phase of the war. Israel will need to keep striking or accept that Iran retains the knowledge, materials, and some of the infrastructure to rebuild. The spokesman said there will be no nuclear weapons for Iran, and that is what Israel is working toward. He also confirmed that Israel is preparing for a multi-front war, including against the Houthis. We will know how to defend Israeli civilians, he said, and we act, we do not talk. Anyone who threatens Israeli civilians, we will strike them. The language is designed to project confidence at a moment when the Southern Front is producing fires in chemical plants, and the Houthis have just launched their first missile at Israel in this war. The multi-front acknowledgement is significant. Israel's military leadership is no longer framing the Houthi threat as distant or manageable. It is framing it as a front that requires preparation, alongside Iran and Hezbollah, 3 simultaneous adversaries, 1 air defense network, and a chief of staff who is already warned of manpower strain. On the same day, Iran's missiles hit a chemical site near Beer Sheva. A strike damaged the Araby TV building in Tehran and interrupted broadcasts. Video posted on the channel's social media showed a reporter walking through the damaged office. Equipment scattered, furniture destroyed, debris on the ground. The strike hit a media building in Tehran, and without a public Israeli explanation of the target, its military status remains unresolved. But the messaging of effect is clear. Hitting a broadcaster that reaches Arab audiences across the Middle East tells the region that Israel can strike the infrastructure that carries Iran's narrative. Whether the building housed military communications is a question Israel has not publicly answered. Iran's rhetoric escalated alongside the missiles. A statement carried by Iranian state media described Trump as the most dishonest leader among all nations worldwide and said he possesses no intellectual or rhetorical stability whatsoever. It said Trump had become a mere pawn in the hands of the prime minister of the Zionist regime, used for war and aggression against Iran. The statement alleged Trump's involvement in the Epstein case had made him controllable. It said the American president has clearly demonstrated that the only language he truly understands is the language of brute force. The rhetoric is designed for domestic and regional audiences. It is not a diplomatic communication. It is a declaration that Iran's military establishment views Trump as an adversary who cannot be negotiated with, only confronted. Whether that framing survives the back-channel negotiations that both sides deny is the contradiction at the center of every Iranian statement about the war. The ground war rhetoric reached a new register. The statement warned that if the U.S. attempts ground operations or occupation of any part of Iran's territory, the warriors of Islam have for a long time been awaiting such actions. It said aggression and occupation will lead to nothing but humiliating captivity, being torn limb from limb, and the aggressors vanishing without a trace. It said American commanders and their soldiers will make a fine meal for the sharks of the Persian Gulf. Parliament Speaker Qalibaf added his own framing. The enemy publicly sends messages of negotiation and dialogue while secretly planning a ground attack, he said. According to IRNA, our men are waiting for the arrival of the American soldiers on the ground to set them on fire. Qalibaf, AP noted, is reportedly the top figure with whom Trump said last week he has been indirectly negotiating on terms for potentially ending the conflict. The man Trump is negotiating with is publicly promising to set American soldiers on fire. That is not a contradiction in Iranian politics. It is the dual-track system working as designed. The 82nd Airborne deployment adds weight to the ground rhetoric from both sides. The Associated Press confirmed the Pentagon is preparing to send at least 1,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East. The 82nd is trained to parachute into hostile or contested territory to secure key terrain and airfields. That is not a peacekeeping unit. It is a forced entry unit. Its deployment signals that the U.S. is preparing for scenarios that go beyond air operations. Whether those scenarios include Kharg Island, the Strait of Hormuz, or positions inside Iranian territory is a question the deployment itself does not answer. But Iran is answering it preemptively. A spokesperson for Iran's Parliamentary Energy Commission said via Tasnim that Kharg's oil exports were continuing and that the island remained secure, a message clearly meant to project deterrence. Kharg Island is the strategic prize that both sides are circling. It handles roughly 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. Any attempt to seize or blockade it would be the most consequential ground operation of the war. The message was designed to project normalcy and deterrence simultaneously. The oil is flowing, the island is defended, and anyone who comes will regret it. Whether that readiness matches the military reality is a question that satellite imagery and intelligence assessments will answer before any boots hit the ground. A chemical plant burning near Beer Sheva, hazardous materials in the air, an Israeli operation that damaged but did not destroy Iran's nuclear chain, a television studio in Tehran hit by an Israeli missile, a parliament speaker promising to set American soldiers on fire while reportedly negotiating with the same president he is threatening, the 82nd Airborne preparing to deploy, and a senior Iranian official standing on Kharg Island saying the oil is still flowing and the island is ready for a fight. The war is now more than a month old. The missiles are still arriving, the fires are still burning, and the gap between what each side says is happening and what the satellite imagery shows is the space where every decision about what comes next is being made. Sunday in the Negev. Sealed windows, hazardous plumes, and 34 fire crews trying to keep a chemical fire from spreading. Sunday in Tehran, a television studio in rubble. Sunday in the Persian Gulf, an official on Kharg Island saying come and try. And somewhere between all three, a deal that both sides say is either imminent or impossible, depending on which microphone they are standing in front of.